Hi everyone, I'm Mari, a tech recruiter, and this is my Women in STEM series where I interview women building interesting things in tech and hearing what their careers actually look like behind the scenes. Today I'm joined by Patricia Causey, who is the VP of Product at Acelab. Patricia has a really interesting background, and I think mainly because she started in architecture and BIM. She moved through estimating, virtual design, and construction, even research as well. So now she leads a product at Acelab, which is a company helping architecture firms manage material decisions, specifications, sustainability data, and Revit workflows in a much smarter way. But yeah, ASLab Patricia leads cross-functional teams across product design, materials, data engineering, and software engineering. Looks like she's helped transform the platform, launch major tools and features, integrate external apps, and overhaul user experience and systems. And yeah, for a little bit more context, we've recently started working with the ASLab as well. So we definitely had a chance to learn a lot more about the team and what they're building. But for people who may not know you, Patricia, could you introduce yourself and explain what ACELAB does and kind of your participation within the company as well?
So yeah, a little bit about myself. So I'm based out of Atlanta, Georgia. I've been in the AEC, tech space, both as someone who worked in implementation, someone who worked as a practitioner, and someone who now works in product for, I think, a cumulative total for, I think, almost 14 years at this point. I started, I think about like 21 and a half when I started out in this industry. But yeah, as you mentioned, I did come from architecture. That's my educational background.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really go into the traditional path of practice, but uh, dove into the technology side to kind of get started there. Um, a little bit about ACE Labs. So as you mentioned, like our mission is really making sure that architects are informed and equipped to make the material decision that they can, because we know that materials are really the basis of a successful project, right? It impacts everything from the aesthetics of a building, the fuller user experience of a building, also down to costs and timeline. So we haven't seen really a solution, a digital solution that can help the architects really optimize all of their different workflows and record all of their decisions without needing, five other tools
Yeah.
to do that, also to create documentation. So we thought, well, why not us? Why not build a system, using the technology that we have access to in order to make people's lives just a little easier. So.
Yeah, great. And I'll go back into ASLab in a little bit. I just want to get a little bit more background on yourself as well. Like you're mentioning, in school you studied architecture. You've worked across many different sectors like BIM, estimating, BDC, things like that. But yeah, looking back for you, I mean, does your career path, I guess, feel intentional or more like one opportunity was leading to the next?
I think it's probably more of the latter, but I think I've always sort of been grounded in this world of design.
Yeah.
It's something that I was always surrounded by design, I think, growing up, whether it's like my parents doing renovations, like my parents also just have a very heavy interest in art and design. So I think I knew that I wanted to stay in that world. Um, Everything else is sort of like one opportunity leading to another. Um, the lucky part is that I've never really had to venture out of design to find some of those opportunities. So
Yeah, great. And then yeah, going into Ace Lab now, I mean, you've obviously led a major transformation of the platform. I'm interested to know, what did the platform look like when you joined and what's changed since then? Because I've obviously only seen it as of recent. I wasn't there at the beginning stage, but I'm interested to know kind of what the major changes were.
yeah, I think so. When I first arrived at AceLab, we were at a very interesting time where the platform, since its inception, was really focused on search. So, and specifically search on products with certain categories. So they started out from the outside in, meaning exterior products, starting out with windows and doors. And then now getting into, equipment, interiors, and so forth. There's a pretty significant change in terms of the business direction, going from search to now, data-powered workflows, data-powered decision-making. Because now we are having to create new tools that allow people to not just search, but also action on their results of that search. So it's really, I don't really see it as like that was the first era and now it's completely different. I think it's really more of a graduation of that. So the search has evolved from this sort of like guided style, let us help you find what you need, to we acknowledge and recognize that as architects, you all are experts in the material space, in the design space. So yes, let us help us find you what you need, but let us also help you coordinate all of those results and then turn them into documents, turn them into actual deliverables that you need to move your projects along.
Yeah. I know you've mentioned kind of material intelligence a lot within the company. I mean, for someone outside of architecture, construction, how would you kind of explain what that is?
Yeah, so I'll make a parallel to BIM, because BIM has been around for a long time at this point. And, BIM has many different definitions. So building intelligence modeling, building information modeling, building information management. But the real kind of crux of that is coordinating all of the data and creating that repository of data so that when you are designing, you are always informed. And some of that intelligence really goes into the automated fashion in which information is being updated as design continues to move forward. Material intelligence works in kind of the same way. As we're going through design, we might be looking through several different products, several different materials. We may be coordinating with our contractors, your owners, engineers to see what is the appropriate decision for fulfilling a certain requirement. Now, as we're making those decisions, right, those decisions are often recorded in several different reports, several different documents in a BIM model. It's kind of spread out. What we realize is that it takes a person X number of hours to go into those documents, if they remember them, that they exist, to go ahead and update that document, that very scattered document. So we thought, why can't we do the same, what was done in BIM as what we, for materials, for product decision making. So when you find what you're looking for, you've made the decision, we update all of the data, all of the documents in one go as you're making that decision. So you don't really get stale documentation. You're constantly working with live data. You are always informed as a designer with the decisions that you've made.
One of the things I found really interesting is obviously the Revit integration that's had a lot of traction within your company, but it's the idea of keeping models and specs aligned in real time. So, I mean, why do you think that's now such a big deal for architecture firms as a whole?
I think because models are a visual representation of the design, and specs are the sort of legal document that supplements and becomes the basis of record for how that building is going to be built, right? They kind of have to go hand in hand. You need to to put it in kind of a simple way, the specs will tell you what you need to build it. It's sort of like an instruction manual. And then the model tells you what it should look like.
Yeah.
Right. And so it kind of makes sense for the two to kind of go hand in hand. You update the model, you update the design, spec should also be updated. If you update the spec, right, should it maybe reflected visually in the model? I don't, not always, because I don't think we're out here modeling insulation, but it would be nice if that information, let's say the thickness of that insulation, is also reflected in the model. What I think we haven't really talked about enough, and where I kind of hope we go to next, is also in like operations and maintenance, because we're, you know, living in an age where digital twins exist, where you know, LOD 500 models and beyond are not as uncommon as they used to be, where institutions are really investing in having these models as assets, not only to record, you know, as-built condition, but also to plan going forward. So having the original specification and other documentation, like say warranty documents, be a part of that entire, you know, ecosystem of digital assets is, I think, really, really important in the near future.
Like you're building in a space where the users are also very highly technical, but to me, they'd also have to be very visual and design led as well. So, I mean, how do you kind of balance the technical complexity with a user experience that hopefully feels simple as well?
Yeah, I think that's also like a challenge, not just for architects, but I think it extends outside of the AC space too. You know, if we look at, I'm a big fan of like automotive design. So, you know, what I find to be really interesting is that cars are often so complicated in its nature, but then when you get in a car, like your user experience, all you care about is smoothness. If your car has Apple CarPlay, if you know, you just want to be comfortable and you want to kind of just know what you're doing. So for us, when it comes to user experience and the complex web of workflows and data that we build with, it's really less about thinking about like what new innovation can we introduce in terms of buttons and visualization, but it's leaning into what are people really familiar with, what works for them, really understanding that, and how do we take that and recycle it forward. Because there's, you know, I think it's nice for a platform to have, you know, really interesting UIs, but sometimes like we need to kind of pull ourselves back a little bit and really think about what our users are going to be familiar with, and how can they kind of breeze through the platform.
Yeah. And yeah, you're mentioning obviously new innovations. So obviously conversation around AI specifically within construction tech and architecture. I know most of the startups we work with within the construction tech space have had to pivot in the past, like I'd say 5 to 7 years involving AI. But I'd say, where do you think AI is actually useful today, and where do you think kind of the distinction is between it being sort of a hype and ahead of reality, or how do you kind of envision it within your space in particular?
Yeah, it's definitely like a hot button topic. I think, you know, I will say like I'm not an AI expert, but I am surrounded by AI every day, just the nature of working in this
Yeah.
space. You know, where I've seen AI has done really, really well is in consuming large data and creating summaries, in automating day-to-day workflows, repeatable workflows, I would say. Um, AI is as good, I think, as the user is. Like, especially if we're talking about like LLMs and, you know, being able to prompt agents and things like that. So what I think is also interesting is that architecture itself is, you know, it's a representation of the human experience. um, I don't think we would be served well by AI if we let AI just start designing all of our buildings and figuring out where things are programmatically. I don't think that that's the way to go. But I do think AI can help us understand better what information is out there. It can help us learn about new methods, new products, new materials. And I think that's where it, that's kind of where we're at, right? The way that we've implemented AI in Acelab is really through some of the data related analysis that we present to our users. It's in the search. It's highly evident in the search that we have. It's the natural language search. It's also AACEi, our co-pilot system that helps you not only find a product, but eventually it'll be able to help you do, kind of fairly simple things like assess whether this product matches your project requirements, things like that.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the decision's up to you because you, as a human being, should be the person that's making the decision, not the AI.
Yeah.
So,
But in architecture, construction tech, BIM, product, leadership, pretty much everything, you name it. But all the spaces that I usually see as quite male dominated specifically. So, I mean, if you could just share a little bit about some of your experience. I mean, have you felt, I guess, underestimated ever in technical or product conversations? I'd say more specifically in the beginning of your career.
I think there's been definitely times. I will say I think I got pretty lucky in my career, especially in the early days where I had people who would champion for me. Like,
Yeah.
I think especially because I was also really young when I started out in the space. I think we're actually seeing a lot of this resurgence now where you are seeing very young, not just women, but young people in general, being placed in these very technical roles with lots of stress and lots of responsibilities.
Yeah.
And I think being estimated, especially when you're young and you're a woman, it's almost like inevitable, unfortunately, especially in the tech space. I think, I would say like maybe look for your allies, right? I think I was really lucky that I had a lot of really good mentors who would not only tell me, how to do things or how to move forward, but also who would advocate for me. It's not, we can't really exist and be successful alone. I don't think so. I remember there were times like, I think I remember I was like 22 maybe, and I was in an OAC meeting and it was like this really long table. And I think there's a picture of this somewhere and I have to ask like a former colleague to find it. I was sitting at the head of the table because I was presenting something on a screen. And it's just like two rows of just men, and they're all just there. And I think in the moment, I didn't really think about it, but I just remember being really nervous. Because if I fail, then it's because I'm not experienced or I'm too young or I'm a woman or something. But if I succeed, right, then I would be seen as like this sort of like whiz kid who is young and knows about all this technology. But it's also important to show that, you should maybe trust these young kids who are also just learning as the rest of us are at the same time.
Yeah, you mentioned being mentored and kind of how other women in the space have helped you. I know now you've also mentored and managed people early in their career. So, I mean, I guess from experience, I mean, what barriers do you kind of see women facing when first entering the architecture, construction tech, or product world as of today specifically?
Yeah, I think, if we take out like the age barrier, I think one issue that I've seen time and time again, and I still can't believe we have to talk about it, has to do with family responsibilities. A lot of the times, I think in our cultures, a lot of familial responsibilities tend to fall on women than they do men. And it's not just the very visible act of like caring for a loved one or caring for a child, where I think in reality, what's interesting is that when women are placed in these experiences, they actually have the capacity to expand. And I think it makes teams a lot richer. It makes companies richer because we have these women who are carrying responsibilities as assets. Sometimes these sort of responsibilities, they prevent women from not just advancing in careers, but also in advancing in just their own general education and so forth. Like I've heard so many times where there's women who have aspirations for like getting a secondary degree and so forth, but then it's like, oh, my kid needs to go to summer camp. I can't really afford that now. Who's going to take care of my kid while I go back to school? You know, I have to take care of a parent and so forth. And I don't think that it's something that can be addressed with just one company doing really, you know, providing a support policy or anything like that. I think it's a systemic issue. You know, systemic societal issue that we have to address. So
I would also just say last thing for the Women of STEM section. I mean, what do you wish, I guess someone had told you earlier in your career, if you could give one piece of advice for younger women entering the field?
I think the one thing that I maybe want to like take off the veil a little bit of perception is that I think for a lot of younger women, because I think historically and culturally, women have been so undermined in their abilities, we start to sort of undermine ourselves by default. I know I did it. I still do it sometimes, like depending on the context, right? But and like, no shade to like the men, because there's a lot of good men out there. I want to like oh my God. But honestly, like you are as good as the men are. You're just as good. Sometimes you're better. Honestly, because you know you have all of these lived experiences that in some ways inform your capabilities and your perspective. But I just wish that women could have, you know, maybe we reduce the amount of women that would undermine themselves to begin with. I think that's a big deal. There's so many people that are, you know, maybe visually or visibly they seem like they know what they're doing. They're figuring it out at the same time. We're all just figuring it out at the same time. Especially in the tech world where things move so rapidly, it is almost imperative that we all learn, continue to learn about all of these new technologies, what the opportunities are. So yeah, everyone's learning, everyone's doing their best, and you're just good, and kind of go from there. So
I guess what are you most excited about now at specifically Acelab or more broadly in, I guess, the future of architect and product technology? Could be either or.
Yeah, you know, the thing that I'm most excited about is I think the overall impact that a tool like ours could have. You know, I think we think about it from a day-to-day basis as being able to collect data, being able to create these documents in a more automated fashion, right? But like if we step back a little bit, like what does that mean to the profession in and of itself? What does it mean to the profession where we can deliver projects just a little bit faster, or we can reduce our overhead work, our manual work a little bit, just a little bit, right? Does that mean we all get to go home a little earlier and spend time with our friends and family, which in architecture, we have this notorious reputation of architecture students sleeping in their studios and pulling all-nighters. And that continues on in practice. Like, I also think that the more informed you are about all of these new innovations in the product space, like in the building materials space, maybe the better our built environment can become. You know, maybe we have this like looming threat of climate change, and we know how much buildings contribute to that. So if we learn a little bit more about these products and materials that could help alleviate that, maybe we help create a better built environment, and that ripples out to creating a healthier future for our kids, our grandkids, and so forth. So yeah, that's what I'm excited about. So So
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Patricia. I'm really excited for people to hear more about your journey and your work at Acelab. But yeah, I appreciate you taking the time, and join me next time on the Women in STEM podcast. Thank you.